Hello, everybody. Welcome to the May Queens podcast. I am Mary Graves.
And I'm Heather.
And we are the May Queens. And it is getting sunnier and sunnier outside. So I've got my natural light out in the background. You can see a little bit better my collection of DVDs and junk and stuff. Dogs are happy that it's spring, so they're barking up a storm every once in a while. And today, we are going to be talking about curses. So I want you to take a few minutes, pause this if you need to, go grab your pentagrams and your incense and your list of people to curse. No, I'm kidding. But what we are going to be talking about is the docu-series from Shudder that I fell in love with the first time I watched, called Cursed Films. So before we get started on that, Heather, do you believe in curses?
Yeah, I think I do. I don't know why I would think there weren't curses. I believe in them.
I'm definitely in the same boat. It's like bad intentions, the build up of bad energy. I believe in people cursing people, definitely. I mean, we come from, witchy backgrounds, so, or we're in witchy presence, actually. And so if you can put out good energy for spell work, obviously you can put out bad energy too. I think people can even curse people without even knowing that they're doing it, or not even like purposefully doing it. For example, when I've had this in a few times in my life happen. But for example, when my mom was really sick with her cancer, and I had a relative who will remain nameless, but she'll never listen to this anyway. She was saying some really rude and really stupid things that upset my mom, who was already dealing with enough as it was. It upset my nieces who overheard her, and then it upset my dad, who was dealing with this thing going on that he didn't need to deal with, like other people's bullshit. Basically, she said that this is before we knew she was going to die, when she was going into a new treatment program. But she said that my mom looked like their mom right before she died. Yeah. And my grandma passed away from cancer too, lung cancer. She was a smoker her entire life. I remember being so upset. I verbally threw her out. I didn't physically throw her out of the house, but I verbally threw her out of the house. And the anger was so intense for weeks. And then we got a phone call saying that this person ended up in the hospital because she had lost her voice. And she was sick and I didn't know why. And I thought, oh my God, did I do that? Did I curse this person? I definitely felt like it. I didn't regret it. I didn't regret her being in the hospital. So I'm like, okay, good. Let her deal with her own bullshit while we're dealing with ours. And sometimes it's like, I don't know, maybe the universe does the cursing for you. Like maybe there's, you have guardians and guides, if you believe in that kind of thing, that are watching over you, that maybe they know your heart and they work through you without you even knowing it. So that's kind of where I come with these curses, or with curses in general. Heather, do you believe, after watching these 5 movies, the series Cursed Films deals with 5 different movies: The Exorcist, The Omen, The Crow, the Poltergeist series, not the TV series, just the movie series. I didn't know there was a Poltergeist TV series until a week ago. Somebody was messaging me about it. And then it ends on Twilight Zone, the movie, which, by the way, I had no idea was even part of a cursed film legacy. And I kind of think that the way they went with it doesn't fit with the other movies anyway. So, but we'll get into that shortly. After listening to them talk about each of these movies, do you believe that these movies, any of them or all of them, are cursed movies?
I mean, from when I was in 5th grade, I remember I just found out that Heather O'Rourke, right? Is that
Yeah.
name? That she had passed. I didn't know she was, had passed. And I thought it was a big deal. And I thought, because of that, I thought the movie was cursed. And I remember going to the library and researching on it, trying to look up stuff. And I mean, I kind of always thought that it was, something bad was surrounding it. I mean, there's just too many things.
I will say that I believe that some of the movies are cursed, but not others. How The Exorcist, They really, The Exorcist, I would say, I'm going to just put them into categories and then we'll dive into the details of the episodes. The Exorcist, I would say no. The Omen, I would say kinda. The Omen one kind of convinced me that it was cursed, or as they say, blessed by the devil. But then, you have to have your beliefs and your system about the devil kind of questioned too. And I'm like, I believe there was definitely an evil presence there influencing things. With Poltergeist, I'm gonna say I grew up thinking it was cursed too, definitely. With Heather O'Rourke, God, I think I was alive when she passed, but I was probably like 2 or 3. So I just grew up knowing this little girl died on the set of, or not on the set, but while this movie was still being made, and that it was really tragic. But the more they talked about the other things that happened with the movies before it, the more I'm like, I agree with them that calling it a cursed film now takes away the responsibility from what actually happened, which was basically an angry boyfriend and malpractice. So I'm going to put that one into the no category on my end. But I definitely grew up thinking that it was, but only because of Heather O'Rourke. I didn't know about the other things that happened. And then with The Crow, I'm going to say yes with The Crow, because just because of the Bruce Lee, Brandon Lee connection alone. And I feel like they explained what happened, but okay, The Crow is a hard one because it comes down to the Brandon Lee, Bruce Lee connection, and then there was some political stuff that they brought up. Just a one-liner that the one guy talked about that also makes a lot of sense, and it kind of feels like what happened with Poltergeist. You say it's a curse, you take away the responsibility from what it actually happened in reality. And then with Twilight Zone the movie, no, I feel like they really didn't lean on the whole curse thing in Twilight Zone the movie. I think just in the end, they're like, people talk about films being cursed because it helps them get through the tragedy. And boy, was that one tragic. What a bummer of an episode to end on. Like, I remember watching that one for the first time. It was late at night because I started the series late and I couldn't stop watching. It's only 2.5 hours worth of programming, but it was like 2 o'clock in the morning and I was just depressed. I was crying. I had to watch that episode like 4 or 5 times in the next 24 hours just to get myself desensitized to what happened. And watching it again for the show today, I still, like, those feelings still kept coming up because it was just so awful. But I'm going to say no to that one being cursed. I think that's just, I don't even hear people talking about it being cursed. I think people just put it in there as a way to help deal with what happened on that set. All right, let's talk about the first episode, The Exorcist. First of all, love or hate The Exorcist?
Oh, I like it. I like it, but I never was one who was like, oh my gosh, this is the best film ever. I don't find it scary. I don't know why. I just never have. I just, it doesn't get to me like that.
I think because I grew up in a Roman Catholic household, so I went to church from the time I was born to about the 7th grade. Like, as soon as I got confirmed, I stopped going to church. I just got really busy on Sundays. I was in this performing course called the Singing Angels, and we had rehearsals Tuesdays and Saturdays for my alto section, everybody on Saturdays. And then as I got more into the group, I also had extra practices on Wednesdays and sometimes Thursdays. So I'm sorry, Sundays and sometimes Thursdays. And I didn't have time, and I used it as an excuse to be like, I can't really go to this mass and then make it to rehearsal on time. So it was just really easy. And also I was discovering Wicca and witchcraft and paganism at that time. So I'm like, this is perfect. I can use this to transition and like not feel really guilty about it. Like my parents weren't making me feel guilty about it. It was a weird time. But the whole idea of being possessed and demonism, and they don't talk about exorcisms in school, but they talk about demons, and Jesus talked to this demon and cast him out and whatever. So the idea was already implanted in my head, whether or not I believed in it or saw it as just a fable, that I guess varied from day to day, whether I've experienced something weird in my house. We sometimes think the house is haunted because there's a closet that my oldest brother and we both used to live in the same room. When he left for college, because he's 10 years older than me, I moved into his room. There's a closet that we both at different times in our lives saw a weird figure with red glowing eyes, and we just could never explain like what the red glowing eyes could have been from. So it always freaked us out, and we always thought, okay, there's something in this house. And living here with my dad for so long, I still believe that there's something in this house. So
Mhm.
I don't know. I think The Exorcist probably was scarier to me because we have those roots in that religious system. And I like how they talked about, the Pope was totally on board with The Exorcist, because it's like we got to talk about demons and we have exorcists and stuff inside. Now, what happened with The Exorcist? I've got my list. This is what I loved about the first 4 episodes, because they lay it out one after another what the cursed events, the events that show the movie was cursed, they lay those out right away. And then they go on to talk about, why it's not, or why it is, or what happened to make all this stuff happen and freak people out. With The Exorcist, the set caught on fire before they started filming, and the only thing that was untouched, or all the sets caught on fire, apparently. But the only thing that was untouched was the bedroom that Reagan was in. She was, demonized and, possessed by the demon Pazuzu. Linda Blair's grandfather died, which he's old. So I assume, you're taking a film. A lot of the rest of the stuff is mostly about people dying, and you're filming something for like a year plus, probably back then, maybe even longer. People are going to die, especially if you have old, like, grandfathered in workers, unionized workers on your set. People are going to pass away. Not everybody's going to be in tip top shape. So that's another reason why I'm like, I don't think this film is cursed. So Max von Sydow, who was the three-eyed raven on Game of Thrones, who unfortunately passed away like a year ago. His brother died too on like the first day of filming. Now, he's younger. I don't know how old his brother was. They just made him the priest. He was the older priest. They made him look super old, but he wasn't that old when they were filming this movie. He was, I think, in his 40s, maybe 50s. So he was still pretty young. So I assume his brother was on the younger side, but still old enough for health scares. 2 of the actors eventually died after filming. The person who played Damien's mom, but she's old, so she passed away. And then the guy who played the producer, who was really drunk throughout the movie, he was the really skinny guy. I think he was older too, and he passed away. And then the cooling special effects guy died, I think before filming, they said, and they had to get a different guy for it, or maybe he died afterwards. But he was the guy who was supposed to keep the room freezing cold, and he died too before the movie was done being made. They talk about this movie, and they talk about the news stuff that popped up, like people were passing out in the theater watching it, and it was so scary that people were throwing up, and they had to have a priest come and bless some theaters. They had ambulances waiting outside. All PR. It was all planned. I don't know. Just like that bugs me too, that they would take advantage of like people's faith that way and stir up controversy. They talk about Linda Blair. I mean, that's the one thing I wish she would have talked about, is the fact that she had to have bodyguards, but
Yeah.
she refused to talk about it. I think she was stalked. Do you know anything? Like, I haven't seen anything else about this. I don't think she talks about it.
No, I like thought about looking it up and trying to find out more, but I'm like, well, she doesn't want to talk about it. Like, why? I felt kind of rude trying to look it up.
Did you see her with her rescue dogs? Did you see the type of dog she's rescuing?
No, wait, what kind?
They're pit bulls, or they're bully breeds at least.
Mm-hmm.
So you see her with this cage with these couple of pit bulls, and they're like dancing around while she's playing with them with the toys. I'm like, that's smart. She's still a very tiny woman. She looks great for her age too. I love her hair. I want hair like that when I get older. I just want a lot of hair. I'm always afraid I'm gonna lose my hair. That's a fear in the back of my head. Um, but and it's probably, I don't know if it's rational, it's just something I fear. But they show her and she's got these big dogs, and I'm like, yeah, she's gonna rescue some pit bull dogs. She needs the extra protection, and she knows that those dogs will be loyal to her now. So very, very smart.
I think so too.
They also have a real exorcist show up on the set too, for the documentary, and they show him doing some exercising, and he's like, it's not as intense, it doesn't need to be. But then you see the people getting exercised paying him, and I don't know, like I guess maybe he's not a Catholic funded priest that's doing exorcisms, which I don't even know if that makes it a real exorcism, even if those people were really being exorcised, because to me, I thought it has to be Catholic approved, Catholic Church approved or something in order to be an official exorcism. Although you have the Conjuring people, which if you've seen the first Conjuring, they do an exorcism without approval from the church because they had to do it right then. So I don't know. I don't know the rules of being an exorcist. If you know the rules of being an exorcist, comment on our YouTube video. But yeah, so oh god, there was another great point brought up too, actually. I made sure to write this down, that the way Reagan was treated, Linda Blair was treated, versus the way the kid who played Damien on The Omen was treated after their movies, said something about society, because they saw this little girl being fake possessed in a movie, and they apparently terrorized her to the point where she can't even talk about it as an adult. So we don't have this with Damien, a little boy who was the devil's son. He wasn't possessed by a demon. He was straight up connected to the devil. And nobody was harassing this kid. He got to disappear and have a life, supposedly. I actually have no idea what he's doing, but nobody talks about him. Nobody fears him. We fear children though because of him in general, I think. But nobody terrorized this little kid. And maybe there's something there about, a woman playing the role versus a guy playing the role. And so I thought that's upsetting and probably really true to form, especially for the 70s. Women's empowerment, the movements, the feminist movement was really big back then. It's big now, but I mean, it was new and big, or newer and big back then. So I don't know. Maybe that's why The Exorcist, or at least Reagan's character, had a little more power behind her than Damien's. All right, let's move on to The Omen, 1976. There's another thing that came up too, and this point wasn't made in the movie, and I just saw it myself. There's one guy who talks about, he actually talks about it in this episode too. He talks about putting movies in boxes. I love it. This is a guy who wears a pin that says skeptic on it. I don't know if you saw that on his blazer. And he's talking about how films aren't cursed. It's about being logical. You have to look at films in the big picture. You take the movies that are cursed horror films and you put them into boxes here. You take movies that are cursed non-horror films, and then you do horror films, and then you do non-cursed non-horror films, and then it makes more sense. That didn't prove anything. You were just putting movies in boxes. You can't do that because curses are not universal. Curses are specific to specific things. That's why you can have cursed horror films and cursed non-horror films. Mm-hmm. Oh, whatever. I hated that guy. He was like, he was taking logic and putting it into a system of belief that does not follow logic. So I don't know, he annoyed me. But the thing is that there's a connection between one of the cursed horror films, The Omen, and one of the cursed non-horror films, Superman the movie was also directed by Richard Donner, which I didn't know that until watching this movie. And they're talking about like the guy who played Clark Kent, and about how he, you know, he fell off his horse and he became crippled after, or later on. He did a few of those movies before that happened. But if they're considering Superman the movie a cursed film based on that alone, which I didn't know that either, that they considered that a cursed movie, then there is a connection between, you know, the guy who directed both of those movies, which makes me think the Omen could be closer to being cursed. I mean, they were dealing with the devil directly in that movie, and the director went on to do other successful movies. Maybe the devil had a hand in Christopher Reeve's tragedy. Throwing that, I don't believe that, but you could throw that out there and be like, this guy's got a connection to the horned one. Be careful with this one. Be careful with this director. The Omen. Okay, now I'm on record as saying I believe this movie was cursed. What do you think about The Omen?
Yeah, I mean, like them being near the Omen sign 66.6. I mean, it seemed kind of odd to me.
Now, I don't know if that part is true. I know the death part is true, but I don't know if those signs actually existed, because I Googled it and they're like, they don't do signs that way. They do them in fractions or something, but I couldn't find anything to confirm whether or not that was true. So I know the death part is true. And the fact that the two airplanes were struck by lightning as two of the cast members were coming over. There was Gregory Peck's plane that got struck, and there was the writer's plane, I think, got struck by lightning. They survived, but Gregory Peck was supposed to be on a different plane and couldn't make the first flight. And that flight ends up crashing. I think most of the passengers lived, but it ended up crashing into the station wagon of the family of the pilot that was driving the plane. That I didn't know happened. That shocked the hell out of me.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, of all the things, the whole coincidence. This was probably my favorite episode of the entire series, because they brought on like actual pagan, like a pagan priest, Uncle Birch. And I don't know if he calls himself a priest. I know he's like internet like guy, a guru type, but in paganism, like in Wicca. And I don't even know if he considers himself Wiccan or a shaman or what, but he's more of a spiritual leader than, you know, say a person with a label who gets ordained or something. But maybe he was ordained in his own coven. And then they had two black magicians, one who does it for internet fame, and then one guy who, they don't really even go into what the one guy, he was sitting in a throne wearing a black blazer suit thing, bald head, a reversed pentagram. I couldn't, like, just in case, I did not look at their eyes in the video, because they were always very good at staring straight into the camera. And I'm like, don't look at them. Don't look at them just in case. You don't need the bad juju. Just don't do it. Just look at the chest, look behind them, don't look at their eyes. It's very, very, very intimidating, I guess. But I like that they had those sources. I guess you could call them sources, or experts in the field of magic, of magical thinking. They even had a guy who wrote a book on the seven ways of thought for magical thinkers or something. And he sounded like a logical, like he himself didn't really believe in witchcraft, but he believed in people who do believe in it. And he was analyzing how they think and understanding them more. And I like that, because I believe in logic. I believe in science. I also believe in people who believe in magic, and I believe in not necessarily the power of positive thinking, because the secret can do more harm, I think, than it can good sometimes, like the book, The Secret. But I do believe in the power of positive thinking pushing you to act, and that's where positive things happen. And that's what I think about like spell work too. You do the spell, but you have to take the action. And I think sometimes the spell work propels people to take the action. But that's how I see it in my head. What are your thoughts on the experts they pulled for this episode?
The one that was sitting in the chair, I don't really know what I thought about him, honestly. I just thought they were passionate about what they did. The one guy, I noticed he did the spell at the end, or he was doing some kind of ritual at the end. He had longer hair, right?
Yeah, EA Quetting, something like that. EA, and then his last name began with a K.
Yeah, I don't even remember. I mean, I kind of liked his energy. The other guy, I'm kind of uncertain on.
I don't know a lot about the black magicians that they have on there, and I don't know a lot about the white magician either, Uncle Birch. I don't even think he calls himself a magician. I think he says it in more of a religious, pagan-y sort of way. While I think the two guys that were on there that were black magicians were specifically labeling themselves black magicians instead of like a black witch or a warlock or whatever they want to call themselves. I feel like their whole being is centered on the magic part, the spell work, not on the worshiping of the earth and how they're whatever they're worshiping, which I think the guy in the chair, it was Satan, and I think the guy with the hair who did the spell, I think his was just chaos in general. I think he was all about angry, chaotic magic type of thing, which is nice and flashy for the camera too. So I do want to know what movie he cursed though at the end. I was trying to read his lips and I'm like, I don't know. I can't figure it out. I should have Googled that. I wonder if it's on online somewhere. Although the rule is that until this spell is complete, you're not supposed to speak it because it takes away the energy that's supposed to be going towards your spell work. That's kind of the rule in white craft as well as in dark craft. I don't want to call it white and black. I know there's a whole thing about like they called it black magic back in the day because it had, that made it sound bad and it had racist connotations. So it's really hard nowadays to call things light and dark or white and black in terms of like good and bad because people it has a racist history to it too, so you really have to be careful with that. But this is just what they were calling them on the series, were black magicians. And I really can't remember what they called Uncle Birch. I just call him Uncle Birch, and he was a nice guy. I liked when he came on screen. I'm like, that dude, I can get behind that dude. He seems okay. But I'm not one to join covens either because I don't make a good follower. I'm going to do my thing. And if people want to, learn from me, fine. But I'm not going to tell you how it is. I'm just going to tell you how it is for me. And if you want to follow me because of that, great. Same goes with my Instagram accounts and my Twitter accounts. I'm not going to tell you you have to follow me. But if it works for me and you think it works for you, go ahead and do that. But yeah, so we talked about the plane thing. They talk about a couple other things that happened. There was a decapitation that I didn't know this either, and that was the one that happened. I think that's the one that happened 66.6 on the sign, right? The Omen sign.
Think so.
Oh, there was a bombing at a local cafe that they were supposed to go to in England by the IRA. Oh, okay. So the special effects supervisor, John Richardson, had a car accident and his fiance was decapitated. And it says that the story is that it was near a sign that said Omen, OMMEN, and it was 66.6 miles away or kilometers away. Now, whether or not the sign is true or not, I haven't been able to confirm that, but that's the story behind it. And then on top of that, somebody who worked at the safari where they filmed the safari scene in Omen got eaten by either a lion or a tiger. The story is still like they think it was a lion, but some people were saying tiger, and now I'm not even sure that really happened either.
Yeah.
So like you should know what animals ate him, but I guess if they're all running around, maybe nobody knew and they just found an eaten body of this poor dude. Okay, so I feel like a lot of these episodes do this where they talk about the curses, they talk about the coincidences. Oh, that's what Uncle Birch said that I liked. That witches don't believe in coincidences. And I kind of think he's right. I feel like, coincidences, they do happen, but we always connect a meaning to them. And that's what the episode was about. It's like, are the meanings that humans connect to them real, or are we just making them up because it makes life simpler to go through or more interesting to go through? The whole documentary series kind of goes on like that, where it's like, we're going to tell you why curses probably aren't real, but we're not actually going to say that they're not real. We're going to let you make up your own mind, but we're going to lean into them not being real, which they didn't convince me that they're not real. They just convinced me that some of these movies are not cursed. But I like the idea they came to at the end of this one, where they're like, we don't think it was a cursed film. We think it was blessed, but it was blessed by evil. Which to me, it connects my theory that Richard Donner was blessed by some sort of evil from this movie, and that's why another one of his movies ended up being another cursed film, but not a horror film. So that's my theory on that, at least. What do you think about coincidences?
I believe everything happens for a reason.
I agree, definitely. It's just some things are just too weird in life, I think, to not like whatever you believe in about, God or fate or whatever, just some sort of kinetic energy just pushing us all together in certain ways. Hell, the moon controls the tides, right? Human beings are made up of a huge percentage of water. So why shouldn't there be a force that makes us rise and fall in the same way, It's science. There you go. It's science. You don't know it's science, but it's science. Boom. All right. Poltergeist, episode 3. Cursed film. I think we went over this. The whole Heather O'Rourke thing leads itself to be, a big curse. I think there were a couple other things, like the boy who gets strangled by the clown in the movie claims that the thing malfunctioned and was really strangling him on set. He's fine though. He didn't die. I don't think he had a terrible adulthood. Not sure if he's still alive, but whatever. As far as I know, that's not really part of the curse. They confirmed for us, though, that the skeletons that were used in the pool were real life skeletons. And I get the reasoning behind that because budgets. And my issue with that whole thing, with the whole, like, not for this movie, but the whole movie making process in general, and maybe they couldn't do a mold like they do now for a skeleton. But if they got these skeleton bodies from India, they never really talked about where the skeletons came from, but the original rumor was that they came from India. Did these people volunteer their bodies after life? Like, did they sign paperwork before they died? Like, I volunteer my body to science, and science happens to include movie making because they get the skeletons from these medical facilities where they're storing the bones. And, you get the bones in schools, or I guess I never really thought about that you have a skeleton hanging in your school and it might have been somebody's actual skeleton. I don't know if it was when I was a kid, but maybe when other people were kids. And I don't know if skeletons today hanging in schools are still real skeletons. My mind just went to a whole new place it didn't go to while I was watching this. But the fact that, we don't know whether or not these skeletons, like the people when they were living, would be okay with them being used in movies. I mean, I know a lot of people want to be in movies in life. Who knows about after death and the soul leaves the body, whatever, but maybe there's still a connection there. That's why I kind of want to be cremated. So, let my soul be completely free once I die. We did have confirmation, at least, that the bodies that were in the pool were real, because that's what they did in all those movies back then, which means that every movie that used a real skeleton would be a cursed film, and we're not hearing that. So that's not enough to say that the skeletons cursed this film, which I think the guy who was talking about, the special effects guy that was talking about how they used the real skeletons, I guess he probably got a lot of shit for that over the years because people didn't understand the process, and they're like, these people died because you used real skeletons. I get where that anger would come from. That's a lot of pressure to take on. Okay, well, they talk about the fact that they felt the first film was so cursed that they actually did an exorcism. They brought a guy on set to bless and exorcise the second movie set to make sure that one was fine, which obviously that didn't work because Heather O'Rourke died during the third filming. And then, Julian Beck, who was the old man from the second one and was supposed to be in the third one, he died from stomach cancer. But the biggest one, the biggest thing that happened, I think, other than Heather O'Rourke's death, and we'll get into the details of that too in a minute, was the daughter, Dominique Dunn, the oldest daughter from Poltergeist 1. She died because her boyfriend, who had anger issues, and apparently they talk about how he did this to other women who may not have died, though. I think he physically assaulted them, which is still bad. He strangled Dominique, and she slipped into a coma, and then they had to take her off of life support, and she died. I didn't know about this. Did you know about Dominique's death before going into the series?
Mm-mm.
I feel like people don't talk about that. They always talk about Heather O'Rourke, which she's a huge part of those movies, yes. But I've never heard about Dominique's death until watching this series for the first time. And I guess this guy was some sort of famous chef or sous chef working with Wolfgang Puck. They had broken up, and then Poltergeist started taking off. I don't even like, I know I've seen the second Poltergeist, but I don't remember it. I'm guessing Dominique died before the second movie, right?
I don't remember. I think it was in a hotel though, right?
I remember there being a Native American theme to the movie. I know there was a shaman guy and stuff took place outdoors, but I can't remember the actual location. I thought there was another house in another suburb, but I don't know.
I don't know. I thought one of them took place in like a big building or something like that.
That's the third one, the one in
Okay.
Chicago. I grew up on that one, so I love that movie. I know people hate it, but I love that movie.
I don't remember. I don't remember the second one. I was thinking the third was the second. So I can't remember at all.
I need to rewatch it. I hear people love the second movie, and I watched the first one for the first time all the way through during one of my Twitter groups. I know I had watched pieces of it and I knew a lot about it because it's like every documentary ever. And so you get to see a lot of it. And the little psychic lady, this house is clean. I'm not a good impressionist, but which, by the way, she was wrong. The house was not clean. I would just like to point that out, that she's not a good psychic. So take that. But but I don't know if I've actually watched the second one. Like, I'm almost positive I have, but I cannot actually remember watching it. So it might be one of those I watched when I was really little, and we probably had it taped off a cable. But I don't remember anything except for the husband being on there. I know the wife and the husband are not in the third one, and I can't remember if Jo Beth is in the second one too. Like, I only remember the shaman dude and the husband, the guy from Coach. That's all I remember are those two guys in it. But the third one, I love the third one with all the mirrors and stuff, and the puddle, and there's an elevator scene where a guy dies. Just I remember I remember going to Chicago for the first time. Well, no, actually second time, but I was driving by myself for the first time to Chicago, and it was night because I left after work. And so it's pitch black as I'm getting to the city, and I see the Hancock Tower in the distance, and it scared me. It scared me because I remembered that movie, and the ending scene, the lightning hits the top of the tower, and you hear the guy who was playing Julian Beck, you hear his laugh, the old guy's laugh. It was so creepy. And I'm like, why does this skyline scare the bejesus out of me? And that's why. It's because it made me think of Poltergeist 3. But yeah, I love those movies, but I really can't remember the second one. But I think they said Dominique died before the second one was filmed. And that's why they probably had to do the exorcism on the set of the second one just to be safe. But the special effects guy made an amazing point where he's like, people are blaming me for what happened to these two women and these two girls. And I was just the special effects guy, the prop guy. They're taking away the fact that this guy was an angry dude who killed this woman. And it's on him. His actions are on him. They should be like he only got 2 years in prison. That really pissed me off. They're like,
Mm.
he was sentenced to 4 or 5, but he really only stayed in for 2. And they had proof that he had done stuff like this before. Ugh.
You would think that that would make it stick for longer. Like they would take it more seriously. And especially with her having been in the public eye so much.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sickening. It's absolutely sickening. They said that the prosecution was, or the judge was against the prosecution for like the entire time of the trial. And I'm wondering if there's a connection between that judge and that restaurant where he was working, or like he's connected to Wolfgang Puck too. You know how these people, the upper crusty people, they're all connected in some way, shape, or form, which is why when a person like Dominique or you and me, we face off against somebody from that, it's a class system. It's classism. That's exactly what it is. And even though she was a starlet, maybe this guy just had more pull higher up, and he should still be rotting away in prison. I don't care if he didn't mean to kill her by choking her. He killed her and he choked her. Awful. And then with Heather O'Rourke, this her death scares the fuck out of me because I have stomach issues all the time. And I'm figuring out things and it's like, wow, I hope this is all right, because what if this pain is something else? And it turns out that the doctors that were looking over her thought she had Crohn's disease and they were treating her for Crohn's disease. But it turns out she had a congenital condition. She had an abscess that caused a bowel obstruction in her body. And I've had an abscess myself, but they've all been on the outside. And I've been able to take care of them myself and clean them. And because I had a really bad fall, scraped my knee, and I got an abscess from that. Could you imagine having something like that growing in your intestines or your bowels? And I guess because they didn't know this, they didn't do the proper scans and tests. It burst and she went into septic shock and died, or toxic shock and died. And that's just so terrifying. And yeah, it's awful. And yeah, this girl was in all 3 of these movies, I assume, because I still don't remember part 2, but I assume she was. You could say that it was a curse, but really it was malpractice on the doctor's part, that they should have been able to catch this and they didn't. And we don't know why. Doctors don't take their patients seriously all the time, which is why personal recommendation for anyone out there having issues with their doctors: go to a DO and not an MD. A DO will listen to you more. They'll recommend a mixture of medications and or holistic treatments, because so many doctors are prescription pushers nowadays. It's just like, that's not going to solve your problem. That might help you with symptoms, but you're still going to have your problem and you're going to have to deal with it while you're younger, so that you can live happy when you're older, or you can make it to being older, pretty much. I've had 2 DOs in my lifetime, and there's been a considerable difference for how much attention I get for my problems and treatment and stuff. I've had a lot of doctors who laughed off symptoms, who didn't listen to me, and things got worse before they could get better. So don't learn from me, learn from Heather O'Rourke. Really know yourself, pay attention, and make sure you get a good doctor. So I don't think this is as much of a curse as it is like a big lesson for all of us to learn, which it's just sad. It's just sad that it cost this little girl her life. What are your thoughts on the whole Heather O'Rourke situation?
Definitely misdiagnosis, but I still think the film was cursed.
It could be 2 things too. Like, okay, these horrible things happened. These horrible people came into their lives because there was a curse. It could be. I just think in terms of this movie in particular, that it's for people who like really loved Heather O'Rourke or really liked Dominique Dunn, maybe to deal with the tragedy of what actually happened in their lives. They would go and be angry at a guy they can be angry at. They can't attack the sous chef guy. He disappeared after he got out of prison. Nobody hears about him anymore. I've never heard him in the news ever again. I didn't hear about him in the news when it happened, but was I even alive when this happened? I was born in 85. I can't even remember when the first Poltergeist came out. I think Poltergeist 3 was still the late 80s. So I might not even have been born when Poltergeist 1 came out and this girl passed away. So I can't find this dude. I can't attack this dude online. I can't attack this dude in letters. It's easier to reach out to the special effects guy who is in the spotlight. He is working on other movies. He still has a career, and maybe now he has a social media presence. So people who don't like have an outlet to the proper person can easily go to this poor special effects dude and be like, you use the skeletons, it's your fault. It could still be cursed. The bad juju could have connected Dominique to this guy and could have put Heather O'Rourke in front of bad doctors. But I feel like taking that thinking, there are people who take it to the extremes and then they fight the wrong person, like fight the people with the influence of the bad juju, you know. But that I think that's also what the whole documentary, the whole series is about too. It's like you can believe that these movies are cursed, or these movies might actually be cursed, but it's what you do in life to honor those who have passed that matters now. Like you can't undo the curse, you can't stop the curse. You have to sorry. I just thought, yeah, I'm saying the curse and people might be thinking somebody's period. It just went in my head. I don't know why. And that's, you know, because that's what some people still call that. So that's just popped in my head. But you can't stop curses. You can't stop people from cursing. And I mean, maybe you can, but you don't know it's happening until it's either happened or you see somebody doing it. And you don't even know who cursed to have it happen. When something bad and tragic happens like that, all you can do is move forward and live for today. And when something so tragic has happened, like what happened to the people who worked in the Poltergeist movies, it's a hard tragedy to deal with. Have you seen In Search of Darkness Part 2?
No, I haven't seen part 2 yet.
Okay. It's on Shudder now, by the way. It just came on Shudder like last week, I think. Nancy Allen is on this one. She wasn't on the first one, but she's on the second one. And, you know, she played the mom, or I guess aunt, I think, in the third Poltergeist. She's the mom to two of the kids, but I think she was Heather O'Rourke's aunt by marriage. She talks about how Heather O'Rourke, whenever she came onto set, even though it was a tense set, that she felt calm, that Heather O'Rourke had a calming presence. And every time she showed up on set, she was like, oh, thank God Heather's here. And she felt like she was an old soul. And then at the end of that, she says, but that's how I have to think to deal with how tragic it was when she passed away. And that, I think that's the epitome of what this docu-series is about, Cursed Films, is that we have to think in a certain way in order to deal with the horrible things that happen to us, to the people on these films. You know, as people who love actors and actresses, there are celebrities, there are kings and queens, there are royalty basically in America. We hold them up to a standard, to on a pedestal. And so when things go horrible for them, when we lose them in tragic ways, we have to think in certain ways, like just to give us a reason why, when really there's just, I mean, yeah, there could be a curse. There absolutely could be a curse. I'm not going to say there's not the existence of curses because we don't know. We know nothing. We only feel the things we feel. And we can believe in the things we believe because of it. And we could be right, but we could be wrong. And it helps us to move on with our lives so that we can figure out the things we can figure out. But hearing Nancy Allen talk about it, because she was the last person to work with Heather O'Rourke, you know, it just breaks your heart to hear it, you know?
Yeah.
Definitely watch that series, that movie though. In Search of Darkness Part 2. There's going to be a Part 3. They just announced it's official. And I'm very excited for that. But Part 2 was really good. They even had Robert Englund talking about Robert Englund in all of his movies. And they had Nancy Allen talking about Nancy Allen in all of her horror movies. So it was a lot of fun.
I'll definitely watch it. It's on my list. It's on Shudder right now.
Oh, is it on? You have it on right now?
No, no. I just have the Shudder screen up because I was,
Oh, okay.
but I was like, I don't have time for that.
Yeah, 4.5 hours, I think, or over 4.5 hours of watching too. So now that I've watched it, I can just put it on in the background when I need to and just work while I watch more of it.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the second to last episode, which was The Crow. Now, The Crow, I was doing the math too while I rewatched this. I know The Crow is a movie I got to see in theaters, a rated R movie that I saw in theaters, and it came out in 1994, May of 1994, which means I was about 8 years old. And my mom took me to see this in theaters. I thought that's so cool. My mom took me to see a rated R movie while I was 8, and it was The Crow. It's a classic. And Brandon Lee was already gone, unfortunately, by the time this movie came out. It was a tragedy. I mean, he was gorgeous in that movie too. So little 8-year-old me just approaching, puberty, getting there. And I'm like, oh, he's so beautiful, but he's dead. It's so sad. But then you dive into, more about the movie. Like, there was two I think electricity things that happened. One being that a cherry picker got backed up into a main wire that I guess controlled the power for the set in the backstage. That got hit and caused power outage, like right before filming was supposed to start. And lost ears. Caught on fire, lost. What did I mean by lost ears? Did somebody lose ears? Or am I making that up?
Maybe you meant lost their hearing.
Oh, maybe.
I don't.
Okay, yeah. So I think that's what I meant by lost ears. He lost hearing, but didn't die, and the wire powered the back lot. And then there was a storm. They call it the storm of the century for that year, and it, I guess, destroyed the back lot, like all their sets. So they had to rebuild the sets too. There was a voicemail before they were going to film. Some random person saying that they shouldn't make this movie because bad things will happen. Oh, and then somebody being interviewed by Entertainment Weekly said that bad things have happened, but at least nobody died, which, what is that? Randy from Scream is like, it's one of his rules. You don't say you'll be back because you won't be back. So you don't say nobody died because somebody's going to die. You're basically cursing yourself at that point. It's so funny because I know this movie deals with death and rebirth and vengeance, but it's not a story connected to the devil. It's not a story connected to evil or possession or the Catholic Church or the afterlife. I mean, it is connected to the afterlife, but not in the same way Poltergeist was, where it was a haunting. So it just seems like such a cut and dry story of vengeance from beyond the grave. You wouldn't think it would be a movie that would lend itself to being cursed the way the other ones do too. But this one I think is the closest to being a cursed film of all the ones we've talked about, except for maybe the Omen, in my opinion. And then you of course have Brandon Lee's death, which we'll talk more in detail about that in a moment. But I want to know, what do you think about The Crow, about the movie and about the curse?
Well, I love the movie. I didn't think that one was cursed. I just thought that it was unfortunate circumstances from the family line, And I think either it was an accident, but I also think, like, how do we know someone didn't end up paying somebody to do, to cause the dummy to, I don't know, however it goes, because they knew how to explain it for the show. So I just kind of feel like maybe someone was. I don't think the movie itself was like cursed. I think it was the family.
The family. You think the family was cursed?
Yeah.
All right, I could see that. I mean, yeah, because the things that led up to this tragedy really, like, it was just Brandon Lee that was really affected by it. And then the sets, they had to rebuild the sets and deal with electrical problems. But yeah, I think that makes, in terms of the curse world, that makes more sense than the film itself being cursed. But I do like the fact that it could be a mafia thing too. There was a rumor that Bruce Lee had issues with the mafia and they could be trying to off his family because of it. And they do go through exactly what happened with the gun. I thought that was genius because I think the visual of it really helped explain what exactly happened to Brandon Lee, because it's like, oh, there was a real bullet in the gun. No, it wasn't a real bullet. It was that they didn't remove the primer from a previous bullet, that a fake bullet that was in there. So it had enough force to push like the shell or the casing or something, the end of the fake bullet into the gun. The prop people didn't check the gun, so you've got like negligence on the job right there. And so when they put the new fake bullet into the gun and it was supposed to push forward into the barrel, it pushed with enough force to push what was left in the barrel into Brandon Lee. They showed like it went through the plywood that they were shooting it into, had the force it had. That's just so tragic. I mean, they wouldn't even talk about, they asked him about being at the hospital, and one of the guys is like, I don't want to talk about what it was like at the hospital. I can't even imagine, like, people blaming each other probably while while Brandon Lee is dying on a hospital table or a hospital bed. It's just awful. Like, it's like you have a bunch of prop guys, like who do you blame for it too? But, and this, we can talk about the Bruce Lee, like the history there too, but I like the fact that the one prop guy was like, I was there for so many I was there, their regular prop guy. How do you put it? I wrote it down. He was their regular prop guy, and it was a right to work state, which, by the way, Ohio is a right to work state, and I've had issues with job stuff because of it. So I felt this statement a lot. In a union busting environment. So people are not protected in right to work states where unions are not allowed. Unions are there to protect the workers, and right to work is there to protect the companies. So little political lesson for you people listening or watching. If people are telling you right to work is good, they're lying. And I can tell you that firsthand, but also this guy is telling you that too. And they sent him home. And then after so many weeks, they were allowed to hire a local guy cheaper to do the work. And I guess they overworked this guy with the hours, and something fell through the cracks. And that is how it led to Brandon Lee's death. And that's so, that's so upsetting, because it's just a quick safety thing that they could have prevented to save him. Unless, the mafia was really doing something and then they did it on purpose. It's just like, it could be the curse, the Bruce Lee curse. Uh, what did you think about the whole, they go into it a little bit, the Bruce Lee family history. What were your thoughts when they were talking about that? Because I didn't know about his history until watching this.
Seems kind of scary. I don't really know how to put I don't know how to put my thoughts into words with that.
Well, it's like, okay, so first of all, I think Bruce Lee's death they said it was unknown at first, but it was Bruce Lee's fault that he died the way he did. That was clear, I think, when they talked about how he had his sweat glands removed. He had his sweat glands removed so he could look better on camera. And then he took a pill, some sort of sleep, something to help him sleep, I think, or an antihistamine or something. And he ended up dying of heat stroke in his sleep because he couldn't function. His body couldn't function the way it was supposed to. Or maybe he had a severe reaction to the pill too, and his body couldn't react, but he pretty much did it to himself. So there was that. However, in one of Bruce Lee's movies, his character dies the same way, basically, Brandon Lee died, except that a mafia guy actually switched the fake bullet with a real bullet in the gun on a movie set, shoots at Bruce Lee's character, and that's how Bruce Lee dies in that movie. And then fast forward like a decade or two, and that's how Brandon Lee dies. Except it wasn't a bullet, it was a dummy casing. Hearing that now, because I didn't know that before, that just seemed like such a big coincidence. And it's like, are there coincidences? Got to go back to see that kind of thinking, if that applies or not. What do you think about the movie they made though? The movie they made about the Bruce Lee story. They showed a little clip of it with Jason Lee, I think, with Jason Lee, who played Mowgli in the Jungle Book movie in the 90s.
Was that him?
Yep. I recognized him even though he had the short hair, but his face, I recognized his face.
Oh my gosh. I don't really know, I don't feel like I watched, or I don't think it was a long enough clip.
The clip they showed, I think Jason Lee was playing Bruce Lee and not Brandon Lee in the clip. And he was talking to his parents, Bruce Lee's parents, people playing Bruce Lee's parents. And the whole idea was that there was a demon. The family was cursed by a demon that wanted boys. It wanted boys in the family. And I guess Bruce Lee, they used to dress him up as a girl because they wanted to fool the demon. I guess his parents had another son, and that son had died before they had Bruce. And so to trick the demon, they would dress Bruce as a girl. And I don't know the whole story, but I guess from the clip they showed, Bruce stopped dressing like a girl, and they're like, oh, now the demon's gonna know. The demon's gonna know we got another boy. And they were yelling at him about it. I'm like, wow, what if that's it? What if it is a demon that's following that family? They did take, say the demon's real, the demon did take both of their sons and now the son's son. That's like, I got chills just thinking about it. Although my heater pushes out cold air when it's cooling down, and I do just feel the cold air, so I could just have chills from that right now. But it does make me it makes me think, like, what if it is a demon taking first sons? That kind of thinking goes back all the way to biblical times. Although Asian philosophy and religion might be older. I don't really know, like, the years. But yeah, biblical thinking, Old Testament, you have Moses and the plagues that happen for the Pharaoh, and took all the firstborn sons of all the people in Egypt. So I don't know. What if that is all true? There's a demon out there taking people's sons when they want to. It's creepy. You've got boys. You watch out for them.
I know, right?
I mean, no, she doesn't have boys. She has all girls. It's all girls, demons, all girls. But that's, ew, it's creepy thing. It's creepy to think about parents passing that on to their children too, because what if they stop their children from living their lives because they're constantly living in fear of this thing that might not even really exist? Or what if you're thinking that it exists, brings it into reality? The power of thought, the power of the mind and the soul connection, all these unknowns to explore or to be afraid to explore. It's just really creepy to think about. So this is a movie that we come on the opposite sides of Poltergeist, where I think it's more cursed and you think it's more practical stuff. Even though there's definitely a practical element, and I wouldn't be shocked if they said, oh yeah, this mafia guy, like 20 years from now, comes out of the woodwork and it's like, yeah, my boss had me off Brandon Lee. Like, I would not be shocked if that turned out to be a thing.
I don't think Exorcist was cursed either, though.
I agree. I think Exorcist was just marketing and PR. And there were some things that happened they could take advantage of, people who did die. But I also think those people were old. They were, meant to die at that time. They were older, or they weren't, the healthiest people to begin with. I don't think it was like the devil in the details type of thing, really coming at these people. And I feel really bad for Linda Blair because of it, because she was attacked. So she's so good. I want to see her in more stuff. I love her so much. Whenever she's on a documentary, I'm like, I could listen to you and watch you in things forever.
I want to meet her.
Me too. I'm betting she doesn't do cons though.
I think she was gonna did she do Texas Frightmare the year I went? Or no, she was at some comic thing.
Really?
Yeah, that year, I believe.
Okay. Well, I'll have to be looking out for that. All right, let's move on to our final episode. And this is the really tragic one. Twilight Zone, the movie. First of all, this is the only one of the series I haven't seen before. But I know a lot about the Twilight Zone movie in terms of story. It's an anthology series. I know about the opening with Dan Aykroyd, and I can't remember who's in the car with him. I just remember it's two guys in the car, and one of them is Dan Aykroyd. And I know he turns around and his face, he's a monster. But I can't remember who he's driving with for the life of me. But I didn't know that there was any tragedy on this set. And this whole episode is different from the other ones because they don't tell you at the beginning. So I'm watching this and I'm like, the first time I watched it, and I'm like, what happened on this movie that they're calling it a cursed film? This is the only episode out of the 5 where they actually have something before the credits too. And they're talking about you're in the decade of directors who directed with two-fisted directors, which meant they were angry, they were powerful, they would get away with doing anything. There wasn't a lot of oversight from the studios like there is now, and for good reason apparently. And so directors could get away with harming their actors. William Friedkin on the set of The Exorcist, with the whole brace thing with poor Linda Blair snapping or spraining her back, the mother being thrown across the room for a good camera angle or a good reaction shot. Stanley Kubrick with the poor mother of The Shining, he made her do a set like 200 times and like would yell at her basically the same way Jack Nicholson would, only sounding more real, just to get her to actually be afraid in the moment of filming and exhaust her to the point of terror. And Friedkin would shoot off a gun to get a reaction from people. I thought that was actually pretty funny, but awful at the same time. So they start off with just a few moments talking about that before the episode even starts. So then the rest of the episode talks about safety. They talk about the one particular story where Vic Morrow is he's going through all these different scenarios because he's a huge racist, and his punishment, or somehow through some sort of magic, is like transported into I don't know, Nazi Germany, where he's a Jew and he has to experience life as a Jew because he hates Jews in his own real life. And then Vietnam, where he's a Vietnamese person against the US Army because he has racist issues against Vietnamese people, or probably Asian people in general, and that he has to atone for his racist beliefs by helping himself as well as those who look like him in these worlds he's transported to. So that's the whole story where the cursed thinking comes in. But then they bring Kane Hodder in, which I love Kane Hodder. I love listening to him speak, but I had a feeling where the story was going when I saw him, because I knew one of the things I knew about him, two things that I know about him: Jason, for more movies than anybody else, and he was burned alive during one of his stunts, and it almost cost him his life. So I knew this was kind of leading towards that safety on set thing. That, and then the beginning of the episode, they were going to talk about being safe on set. And then they bring in Lloyd Kaufman from Troma, who I don't think I've ever heard speak before. Have you seen Lloyd Kaufman speak in things?
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on him?
He's the character. He's so funny.
I love I looked him up too. I'm like, he's got a wife and he's got kids. He's got to be like the funnest dad ever. He's just a complete nut. He's there in a dress. He's not a trans person. He's just dressing in drag just to dress in drag. And he's got these bottles of booze on his table, which one of them's a Patron bottle. And I've never seen a Patron drink look that color before. So there's no way that's actual booze, but he's just chugging it and dripping it all over himself. He's just a character. But you see him on the set of, what is it? Shakespeare Shitstorm is a new movie they're coming out with at Troma. And for those of you who don't know, it's Lloyd Kaufman is the head of Troma, and he used to be just one of their directors and probably a production hand for when Troma started. I don't think he started Troma. I think he rose through the ranks, and now he's the head of one of the only independent film studios left at the moment, or at least the most famous one, because I'm sure nowadays people are probably starting their own, because the internet connects everyone, and everyone's got finance sources somewhere, GoFundMe's and stuff. But he talks about how the most important thing is safety on set, that it's make a good movie is at the bottom of his list of rules and in small print, but he's got on the set signs about, make a safe movie, and everything about safety and having a good time and stuff comes before actually making a good movie, which could explain why the trauma movies are the way they are. But they're not horrible either. I watched Mother's Day when Eli Roth was on Joe Bob. I was surprised how good of a movie that actually was. Yeah, there's some things about it. It's really gritty and dirty and stuff, so you have to be okay with watching those kinds of movies, which I am. And it was actually a really good story. Really creepy, but a really good story. They were talking about how it's most important to keep somebody safe. And they even have a fire thing, a guy lit on fire on their set. And it's like the teeniest, tiniest fire on the sky. I thought that was hilarious. Because then you got Kane Hodder, and they showed his clip the first time they lit him up on Friday the 13th, part 7. And it's like the whole room was ablaze with a fire. And then you go to Trauma. It's a little itty bitty fires, and he's rolling down the stairs. Ridiculous. But then they get into what exactly happened on Twilight Zone, the movie. And I had no idea what I was in for. And I was shocked because they show the clip of what happened. But apparently there was, oh God, I could hear the guy's voice in my ear. The guy who designed the sets was one of the people that they interviewed, because he found this beautiful area that he turned into a Vietnam village, and he had these beautiful huts that he helped make, or his team made, and they were going to have explosions set off and a helicopter come in, and Vic Morrow was supposed to help these 2 Vietnamese children survive. And he was going to have one child under each arm and be trudging through this fake river, real water, real river, but fake Vietnamese river, to try to get away from the military. They were trying to bomb the village, and the helicopter, they were trying to shoot him down. I know that the set designer said that he found an explosive that he didn't approve of. So right. He's like, if it's not approved by me, it doesn't stay. So if there's anything else on the set, remove it. And I thought they tested out some of the explosives, but they must have added even more, and they didn't listen to them. Somebody didn't listen to him. We still don't we don't know who to blame for what happened on the set, but I definitely not the set designer's fault. I feel like he did everything he could, and I felt really bad for him, because he talked about how he was at the prime of his career, and after this tragedy, nothing. He didn't do anything after it. And I mean, I don't know if that's because nobody wanted him, that people blamed him too, or is that he couldn't do it because he couldn't be on a set anymore. And I feel like it's the latter. I feel like he just couldn't do it anymore. So they talk about what happened with the helicopter, and the helicopter's coming in, the explosions are going off, and he's standing with John Landis, who I love as a director, and I really wish I could have gotten him to speak on this whole tragedy. But I have a feeling that he probably didn't want to, for reasons. And he was standing with Jonathan Landis, and he goes, "Oh my God, run." Because the explosions were getting too close to the helicopter, and it brought the helicopter down right on top of Vic Morrow and the children. And their parents were there too. And they talk about how they hired the children illegally, because children are not allowed to work, at least at that time, past midnight or past 9 o'clock or something. And they were filming at like 2 o'clock in the morning. So they hired the children under the table so that the studio didn't even know that they were doing this. And the parents were there watching it. And you see the clip, you don't see the bodies, like you don't see gore. You just see the helicopter come down and the blades make them disappear. And the first time I saw that, I just shocked. I didn't even know what I was seeing. It was so intense and so upsetting. And I can watch people being disemboweled. I can watch people's eyes being gouged out in a horror movie, but you show me a real tragedy like that, and it just hits in such a different way, which is why I won't watch Cannibal Holocaust, because I know they kill animals for real in that movie. Even though,
Mhm.
I could watch the people dying, but the animals that get killed in that movie, they die for real. So I don't want to watch it. But what did you think? Did you know, first of all, when you were watching this episode, did you already know what had happened on the Twilight Zone movie?
No, I had no clue. It
What were
was
your
like
thoughts?
it was shocking. It was sad. It pissed me off because it felt like, someone didn't listen to, what is it? The one who did the villages and stuff. He wasn't listening to him. And, he said, if there's anything else on here, you need to bring it out. And I'm like you, I think they probably added more. And it's just sad that people had to lose their life because somebody was, oh, well, he can't tell me what to do. Like that's just kind of how it felt. I don't know if that's how it happened, but
No, I think that is how it happened. I absolutely believe. Well, I believe that there was stuff there that they didn't remove. Maybe they didn't add more, but they didn't listen to him when he said, remove the extra stuff. I didn't want this bomb here. We didn't plan for this bomb here. Remove it. And I truly believe that they didn't listen to him, and that they left the stuff there that they shouldn't have. And that's just, I mean, it's just like, it's one thing for people to die making a movie, but that's just such a horrible situation. And talking about the mom clinging to the tree while
Mhm.
watching this, and then the set designer turning around and being like, where's he saw the helicopter had gone down, but he hears people saying, where's Vic, where's the kids, and the kids have been completely torn up by these helicopter blades. That's why they couldn't find them. Just like shivers, total shivers, just thinking about it and rewatching it to prepare for this. I just, like, all those emotions came back up. I had to watch it with my dad. I'm like, Dad, you have to watch this because I need to talk to somebody about this. So I made him watch that episode with me. And he's like, yeah, I remember when this happened. I'm like, I had no idea this happened. Nobody talks about this. And John Landis, as a director, has had a huge career before and after this happened. And still, I've never heard about it in anything. So I feel like maybe Cursed Films took advantage of that a little bit by putting this in the series. But I also think it's really important to talk about because there are up and coming filmmakers, there are new filmmakers, there are young filmmakers, and safety is incredibly important. And people keep complaining about, studio interference, and there are things where the studio needs to stay out of, like editing. But when the studio is like, you can't do this for safety reasons, I think now we know why. And it's important to learn from the past of what has happened to these other filmmakers to know. Now, people were really angry at John Landis, and I think that's wrong. And I wanted to know what your thoughts are on that.
I mean, I don't really look at anyone to blame or to like be mad at. It's just sad that that happened. I just think it was really sad. Yeah, like I said, I don't want to blame anyone. There's no one I'm trying, I just think it's shitty, terrible.
It's definitely probably a combination of factors, but I can't see how, unless the director, you can prove that John Landis said, I told them to put those extra explosives there. I can't see how he could be to blame for this at all. And it makes me feel really sad that people automatically are angry at him for it. Even my dad watching the episode is like, that asshole, when they were showing him at the funeral, which, by the way, he should not have said what he said at the funeral about Vic Morrow being immortal because he's at least on film. Not the time, dude. Read the room. But I get why he's probably dealing with it in a horrible way, because he probably feels responsible because he hired the kids. So I get that he had to deal with it too, but it's just the wrong way to deal with it. But I wouldn't blame him for the actual like malfunctions that happened on set. Those are the things that caused the helicopter to come down in the first place. So unless he said, hey, bomb makers, put extras in this area, we want really big explosions, I don't know. It could have been, but they didn't lean in that direction. So I honestly don't know. And I feel bad. I feel bad that he can't talk about it, because I think we need to hear him talk about it just to know more, just to make up our own minds. But and also he's had a huge career now, so why not come out and speak about it? If you are the asshole that caused it, just say you're the asshole that caused it and you can retire. It's fine. You're basically, I don't see him doing a lot of stuff now. So be a guru to other people and retire. That's fine. I can still watch your movies and like them because there's so many people involved in making these movies. It's not just about you. I don't know. I wish I would have gotten him to talk about it.
Me too.
All right. Well, that brings us to the end. It's a phenomenal series. I highly recommend it. Go watch it. Be prepared for some insane visuals and a lot of stuff that we didn't even talk about that they talk about in the series. Heather, what is your week looking like?
Just working on a few little projects for, like, I still put on Heather Let's Score, and that's really about it. I feel like there's something else, but I can't hear now.
All right. Well, everybody stay tuned to Heather's Instagram page and Twitter and see what's upcoming with her. It's at Heather_loves_horror. And I think, I should have looked up your Twitter account. It's I think it's Heather Myers. I think.
Heather Beck MYE1.
Okay. So look for that and you'll be able to find her. For me, I just filmed the next like 3 Terror Tuesdays episodes. I need to edit them together. Doing reactions now. Go check out my Instagram page and my YouTube page for my first reaction video. If you want to watch the entire reaction and the entire movie with me, the movie is not posted. My entire reaction is posted. For the movie From Beyond is the first one. Then you can join my Patreon channel. I haven't set this up yet, but I will be setting it up over the weekend. $5 for the first tier, and so far the only tier, and you will get access to all those reaction videos when I post them. But I will get a head start on all the other ones because I filmed 3 of them last night, and I'm filming a 4th today. The next Terror Tuesdays episode, since this will be coming out before then, I will give you a hint. It has to do with evil truck. So, and it was so good. It was such a better movie than I thought it was going to be. So that's all I will say about that. All right, that's about it, guys. Have a good one, Heather.
Have a good one. Bye, girls.
Bye.